No, I think we're waiting on technical difficulties to be worked out.
Everything's ready.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're all set. We're all set.
There you go.
Pledge allegiance to Jesus Christ.
Praise be for the departed.
You okay? Town Council Workshop meeting for May the 18th, 2021 is reconvened at this time. Thank you. Cliff, I'm going to turn it over to you. Item 5 on our agenda, budget workshop discussion items.
Okay, thank you.
Cliff.
We've got listed in this agenda item are 9 areas that we'd like to touch on as briefly or as much in depth as you would like for us to, and as well as answer any questions or address any comments you might have on the manager's recommended budget. But of these 9 things, I'll go ahead and start with the use of fund balance. As you know, in the manager's message, it points to the fact that we are using a considerable amount of fund balance in the recommended budget for next fiscal year. And the amount is $1,223,392. Of that, $770,000 is going to the capital reserve fund. $20,000 is annual appropriation for the canals, and then $750,000 for to pay down some of the beach nourishment debt. But that still leaves almost $450,000 worth of fund balance. We think that we're looking at using about $1.2 million of fund balance this year at the most. That could probably be less. But with your fund balance policy of not going below $3 million, we think we'll have a minimum of $490,000, likely more, at June 30, when we finish the year and go into next year. So I just wanted to make sure. I mean, you're used to having a lot more fund balance than that, and so this will kind of put you at, if you're not considering the $3 million that's kind of designated. This would leave about $500,000 in undesignated fund balance, and so I want to make sure you're fully aware and fully comfortable with that amount. I'll say looking forward to next year, or I don't know about looking forward as in a tax increase, but looking into next year, of course, we're not going to have as much fund balance to balance the budget. So that's why part of the reason why I'm anticipating this. I kind of feel like we're delaying the need for a tax increase, partly because we can absorb it in this year's fund balance, and then also acknowledging that we could be looking at 3.5 or more cents of a town increase for beach nourishment. So I'll just see if there are any questions or concerns with that moving forward.
I would think, I'll say this. We changed our money we'd like to keep in the fund balance from 1.5 million, 1.7 million to 3 million. I think we gave ourselves a pretty good cushion there. I'm comfortable with what you're doing from my perspective.
So after using that $1 million plus or minus, how much would be left in the undesignated fund balance?
We think at a minimum, there'll be $490,000. But as revenues continue, this current fiscal year, as revenues continue to come in above expenditures, we'll likely put in excess of that back into the fund balance. So,
So we would still be good with the minimum $1.5 million.
No, your fund balance policy is you never go below 3 million, and that 3 million is kind of earmarked and set aside and untouchable.
Okay.
So this would be in excess of that.
Okay. So we're still going to be maintaining an undesignated fund balance of 3 million.
That's right.
Okay. Okay.
Minimum. Yeah.
And this is based on the 6/30/20 number.
Yes. Yep.
Well, this actually sounds right in line with what our auditor told us many, many moons ago, in that if that undesignated reserve fund keeps growing and growing and growing, then we may have to either spend or reduce taxes.
Yeah, it's still a strong fund balance.
Yeah,
Very
which
strong.
is good, but
A lot of towns would like to have 50% plus.
yeah.
You don't know off the top of your head how we compare to other towns in the county on that
I-
front?
You know, when I've looked at other towns, coastal towns and their budgets, I think we're on the higher end of most.
We've been way high.
Even in, you know, that whole 8% that the LGC recommends, of course, doesn't apply to us because of our vulnerability. But when I've read other budgets, they'll reference that 8% and say, we're at 25. And, you know, so that's kind of low to me. I mean, I think 50% is, like I said, on the upper end of where towns are.
Would it be fair to say that staff's experience with estimating revenues has been particularly challenging over the last 14 months versus the previous, say, 4 or so budget cycles? Would that be a fair statement?
I'm looking at the revenue in years past, since 2016, I think, with the exception of maybe last year. And there's a whole lot of reasons what I'm about to say, you may be over, you may be under. It wouldn't take a whole lot to throw things off if you don't get a grant that you budgeted for, or if you do get a grant that you weren't expecting. That, you know, those things can have a big impact. But I would say last year, or the present year we're in, especially because not knowing what to anticipate. And here we are a year later, and you're trying to anticipate less. Now we're trying to anticipate more. And I mean, it's almost a complete about face. But with the exception of 1 year, I think we've been just over what we estimated we would be in budget revenues. And I mean, I looked at the whole budget, but sales, occupancy, and land transfer being the big ones. To the finance officer's credit, she missed land transfer by $15 last year in her revenue projection.
She needs a raise, I think.
We'll give her half of that $15. But ordinarily, we're just below the revenue projection.
Yeah, it just seems logical to me that it would be particularly challenging considering what's happened over the last 14 months. And then trying to figure out going forward what might happen is even more challenging on the revenue side. I think you have a better feel for it on the expenditure side because you've got all these supervisors out here that have submitted their budgets to you. They know about what things cost, unless you have some crazy, you know, price change in things. But I think on the revenue side, it gets really hard when, you know, things like world health pandemics start to play a role.
Yeah.
So
And
The-
hurricanes.
The challenge is short term, the revenue is going to go up some. The challenge is sustaining, because we aren't going to see all these spikes of occupancy and sales tax and meals going way up, because that's abnormal for us. Somewhere that's going to level off, and that will impact what our revenue would be.
It sure isn't leveling off at this
Maybe.
point.
No, and I said short term.
Yeah, you're right.
Not tomorrow or the next day, but, how long can we sustain 141% increases year after year? You can't do it. And that's the challenge.
It's a perfect segue, because the next thing I had under here was I wanted her to speak to you about how she, determines the projections. One thing I wanted to throw in here is, it may come up later when we're talking about the budget. I learned yesterday that with the American reinvestment plans, the town's looking at eligibility of receiving $870,000. And we can use, there's very specific ways in which you can spend that money. And it's hard for us to fit in some of those categories. But what I learned yesterday was we can use those funds to budget something that we took out of the budget. So, the first thing, when we balanced this year's budget, I think there was about 450,000 plus that was removed from capital projects. And so we could use part of that money to put that back in the budget. So, if we took out that amount, I don't think, we took that amount out so we can put that amount back. I don't think we have to say we took out COs, so we got to put COs back. We just took out that amount.
Right.
So I think we can use those funds in that way. We have until December of 2024 to spend those funds. So at some point, I think maybe even next month, we'll come to you with the resolution asking you to accept those funds, and then we'll put them in a capital reserve while we wait to determine what we're going to do.
Are they pretty much a sure thing?
It's sure. I mean, I think some of the non-entitled communities, the big, cities are already starting to see their funds. So, yes, I think so.
That's a hopeful. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's just hard for me to say definitively, or maybe it's just hard for me to accept the fact that there's $870,000. I mean, it's just a once in a lifetime amount of money that
won the
gets handed
lottery.
down to you. Yeah, I mean, they're even they're the NEPA, the Environmental Protection Act. Some of these things that you have to go through to spend federal dollars are being waived to try and clear the way to get this money out there as quickly as possible. And that to get the money and the red tape waived is just
That's a
mind-blowing.
big plus.
Yeah, but I'll ask Bonnie to talk about the revenue projection.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, Elizabeth, that has been a challenge this year, last year and this year both. Surprisingly, as you all have probably seen from the financials that I've sent, we're doing really well in the shared revenue department. We're coming in well above where we thought we would be. So that's a good thing. So that means, okay, so what is my base to start, trying to figure out for the upcoming year where we're going to be? So I'll just kind of go through, and I wanted to bring to your attention, does everyone have their line item budget with them? Because that's kind of what I was going, I mean, you don't have to, I'm just going to kind of go if you wanted to follow. Yes, sir. So on the property taxes, the ad valorem current year, so what we had to do this year, as told by the tax department in Dare County because of the revals, we had to take into consideration 5% less due to appeals. Luckily, we have done, I don't think we had that many appeals because we have collected a little over 3 million to date. So that's why the significant increase there, because we didn't have to show less the 5% for appeals. So that's where all of that comes from. And of course, the NCVTS, that's the North Carolina vehicle tax, where you have to pay your taxes when you renew your sticker on your car and that sort of thing. So all of those things are pretty straightforward. And I want to point out that this is the last year of the special assessment for the Pelicans Watch Beach Nourishment Project. So that's the 30,000 there. So those numbers are pretty straightforward. And so what the statute tells us is when you are budgeting for the ad valorem, you cannot budget more than your collection rate from the previous year, which is normally about 99.65%. It's pretty high. So That's how that is computed. Now, when it comes to the sales tax, what I did was, I've kept a spreadsheet, and I think I have sent that to you all, that shows last year to this year on the occupancy, the sales tax, and the land transfer. So I have done the projection of where I think that we're going to end for the year because due to the percentage of increase that we have actually received to date. Dare County Finance Director David Clausen, he also sends out some numbers each year that we use for our shared revenue numbers. He's pretty close, and I always, everyone has their own little twist that they put on it that works for them. So what I did to come to these numbers is I took where I think we're going to end up, and then he showed us less, the amount that we'll be receiving less, and that could be due to, people's increasing their tax rates last year, establishing MSDs or that sort of thing. It showed us receiving less than we did this current year. So I took the number and reduced it by the amount that he suggested, and that's where I came up with these numbers. I feel very confident with occupancy and the sales tax. Now, the land transfer, at some point, we know that the bottom has just fell out on that, and at some point it has to stop. This year, we'll probably end up at about $500,000, the current year that we're in. If I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't work here, right? I'd be on Wall Street somewhere, but hopefully our number is pretty accurate. But what I always would like to do with these is, I like to get them as close as possible, be a little bit more conservative than generous, because it's a whole lot easier for me to come to the council and say, look, we've gotten some extra money here. Can we budget that? We need to spend it on this, than saying we need to take some money out of fund balance because I'm way off. So that's how we've done the revenues. On the unrestricted intergovernmental revenues, those are the North Carolina League of Municipalities put something out every year on their projections. Their projections are pretty accurate of the amount that they expect them to increase or decrease. So those numbers are according to what they projected. The PAL bill money is more in line with what we have received. Sometimes they give you a certain amount per mile and then also per capita. But this is more in line. I think we've received about this year, I don't know, off the top of my head, it's closer to the 110 range. The GCC grant is a police grant. That's going to offset an expense that's in the police department. So that's kind of a wash, but that's how we have to budget that. And going down, you can see the main difference between those two is going to be the $250,000 Dare County Beach Nourishment grant that we received this year towards the engineering for the project. And also those other two grants for the CARES Act grant and the ZEV charging grant that for $10,000. Those are the main differences between those two. Building permits are well over budget. I'm glad to report that. Actually, I think that we are currently at about closer to 140 for this year. Again, I don't know whether to keep it that high or if the cost of lumber is going to deter anyone. I don't know. Councilman Neal, what's your take on that? Do you think that's a fair number?
My crystal ball is broken.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you
Yeah.
say?
It's crashing on.
So, well, that's kind of what I try to keep in mind. Where we are now, I think we'll probably end up pretty close to I would say 150-ish for the year. But I didn't know if that was going to continue or not. So I did go to 130. I talked with Wes about that and what we, know that's coming up or happening, but the rest of it is just kind of hard to predict. And all of that pretty much stays the same.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
Court costs and fees, I see it's we're budgeting 1,200. What's that all? What's that entail?
Hold on. That is when our officers go to court, we get money for that. And so that goes in that budget. It's not a whole lot of money.
Yeah, I just was,
Mhm.
it just caught my eye.
Yeah, we get it from the clerk of court for officers' time.
Yeah, okay.
And then other revenues, the main difference that you'll see is our interest income. Boy, that's killing us. So that usually, like I put on the last month's financials, we're able to book our expenses, whether it's new check orders or whatever against this. So it kind of nets out, how much money we make. We're not even doing that. I'm having to put that against an expense line in the admin budget. I mean, it's not even covering it, not even half of it, not even close. So that's going to be your main difference there for
I
For the
know
interest.
rates, but that's a pretty big swing.
yes.
200.
And we, $1,000, I mean, right now, we are currently at 1,200. So, I mean, I might could bump that up maybe to 1,500 in hopes that it's going to get better.
Look at what we did amended
Mhm.
2021,
Yes, sir.
and then where we were actual 1920. I mean, that's.
Yes, disheartening. Any questions on the revenues?
I think you might have answered it, but I've missed it. The tax penalties and interest, that's a pretty significant jump. It was $90-some thousand on the ad valorem tax revenue.
Hold up, wait a minute. Yes, you're right, because oh, I see that now. Hold on a minute. Yeah, so the 97,894 should be the NCVTS number
Okay.
instead of the 112. So that needs to, thank you for catching that. The 97,894, that needs to be the NCVTS number, and because that tax penalties and interest is usually around 3,000. So yes,
I just didn't know if
Good
we'd
catch.
identify a different revenue source.
good catch. I missed that. Yes. So that's exactly what it should be. The 97,894 should be the NCVTS, and then, so that will be that much less
So what will
revenue.
be the tax penalty then?
Like 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
about 3,000. So what ended up happening was, the 112,493 was the number when our tax rate was going to be higher, and then when we talked about keeping it at the same, it brought it down to 97,894.
Okay.
Yes, so that needs to be fixed. Thank you.
What line are you on?
This is very top.
Very
of the
beginning.
Page 2,
Revenues.
I have-
Oh, okay.
back on page 2,
Page
the
2.
third and fourth item down.
The other question I had is largely, well, I think, are we going to discuss this as we go through, or are we just getting briefed? That's up to council.
Discuss it as we go through, the manager said.
This is just something that, the 30,000 special assessment as a revenue, I think when we talk about the MSD tax rates going forward in another workshop, I think I would be willing to consider trying to absorb that 30,000 on behalf of the Pelican Watch people this year, so that they're not have that special assessment and then another MSD assessment. Is that something that can be done?
We checked with that with the School of Government. That's not, we don't have that option.
We don't. They have to be assessed.
I do think there's a way you could, it speaks to an irregularity, and you could consider debt on top of debt as an irregular thing. So they have 10 years to pay that. So I do think there's a way to give them an option of deferring that to the 10th year, or you could reassess and divide the math. Instead of $30,000 a year, they could make the last payment over 5 payments. Or they could just defer it until
We can't
10th
forgive
year.
the debt. I mean, we've already paid it, so it's not, this is just a revenue at this point to us.
Right.
Okay.
We can't issue any type of.
And I don't want to bog down just a second. That's something that's been in the back of my mind for a month or so.
Yeah, I've looked, I've asked, I don't know how we how we do that.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was my only question.
Thank you.
How would we go ahead and plan to do that? If we wanted to take it, let them have 5 years to pay it back rather than 1 year? Do we just send them a letter and say, here's your new assessment value because we're going to give you 5 years to pay back instead of 1?
I think we could contact them all
Mm-hmm.
and give them a choice, because they, if understood right, they could have paid us, even though we gave them 5 years,
Mhm.
they could have just paid one
Some of
check and
them
been
might.
done. So we could, y'all could decide you want to go back, you'd have to go back through the process and kind of reassess, but
Mhm.
all you're doing is dividing by 5,
Okay.
and they would have the option. You know, they could pay it over 5 years, they could, you would just put that back in the resolution that initiated the process to begin with, you're just amending that process.
And we would do that when we adopt the budget in
You
June.
would want to do it before July 1.
Okay.
Now would that, how will that impact their tax statement from the county? Because that number's on there now.
Yeah, we would, the county would, we would tell them
What
when
to
we
put on
collect
there.
this amount
Okay.
of the assessment.
Okay. Thanks. I would also be supportive of that idea.
What do you need? I mean, should we try to put something like that in motion, or
Do we wait till June to
I don't mean make a motion, but
Yeah.
give you instruction. I mean, should
Yeah.
we plan for that on the June 1st public hearing, or?
We may have to advertise a public hearing to do that, but I'll go back and revisit that process
Okay.
and make sure whatever we have to do, we're able to do at the
Okay.
June 1st meeting.
Okay.
So we would need to adjust this number too, probably. Right. Any other? Okay, any other questions on the revenue?
One more thing I wanted to say, just so I can throw it out there. The next year, if those special assessments were deferred 6 years out, because we're in the 4th year, so if the 5th year was paid in the 10th year, we could be right back where we are
Oh, yeah.
potentially.
Or even divided over, split this last
Yeah.
annuals over the next 5 years.
That's
So
what
it's
I was
still a little bit,
recommending.
But it's sliced out, just, I mean, it's
Yeah,
probably,
just-
it's
Say-
probably pittance, but it's an effort. at
Yeah,
least.
it's,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
I wasn't saying postpone it. I was agreeing with what Matt, we need to just,
I mean,
give them
honestly, if I could forgive
5
it,
years
I
to
would
pay it
probably
off
be
rather
thinking
than
about
1.
forgiving it, but
Yeah.
we can't.
Take that, well, some of them, what's it?
Balance of what they already,
Have repaid.
1 year payment.
Instead of doing it 1 year, they can take 5 years to do it.
To pay the $30,000. The $30,000 balance, instead of having it all come due next year, what they're saying, because we can't totally forgive it, is to give them longer to pay it, the final payment over 5 years instead of next year.
That would be in addition to what assuming we go ahead and do another beach nourishment project, that would be in addition to the payments they'd have to incur for that, the tax rate. Taxes have to pay for that. That'd be in addition to that.
In addition, that's correct. Yes,
It's
sir.
currently in addition.
It's
now.
currently.
Yeah, it's currently in addition. So when they get their tax bill, it says Dare County, Southern Shores, and then it'll say
There's other.
special assessment or
Yeah.
something like that, because when the county gives it to us, it's listed separate from that. And so instead of them having to pay the balance of the $30,000 of the original 150 this coming 21, 22, they would have, like they're saying, 5 years to pay it.
I understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any other questions? So what that means is as soon as I sit down, I'm going to fix this. And so what that means is the use of fund balance is going to be that much more, yes, for whatever reason, I did not catch that.
So our unassigned fund balance is going to go up by?
25, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll wait for Bonnie to calculate.
Yeah, let me get to my calculator.
Let her do
She
it.
didn't want to
magic.
answer off the cuff.
No.
I was like, oh my gosh. Any other questions? And you want the department heads to be now, right? What, are you doing admin or you want me to?
You go ahead. But the next thing we had was, rather than going through each line by line in each of the department head budgets, we have the department heads here, and you can, I mean, if you have any questions or if it's okay, we'll go that route rather than line by line.
So the first department is administration department. That one's, does that, anybody have any questions specifically for that for Cliff or I?
Are we comfortable with the 60,000 for legal fees?
As of right now, yes, because if you remember, like for the beach easements, for the beach nourishment, we did a budget amendment to do that separately from this, so that doesn't come out of this pot of money. So that's a different pot of money. So for right now, we're okay with that.
Is there a budget highlights for administration department?
No.
And I'm just not seeing it.
No, I don't
No,
think there
I
was.
didn't,
Okay.
I didn't see one.
No.
Okay.
So where am I?
We're on page 4.
Page
In
4
the-
in the
in
little
the-
skinny book.
Yeah,
I got it. I
Yep.
got it.
Mhm.
that's fine.
Are there any other questions about administration?
How about it says administration department right there on the first top of the page. So,
Are we still incurring legal fees from the lawsuits that were filed against the town?
Not currently. Right now, what most of our are from the easements for the beach nourishment,
Okay,
and then just our general stuff. So not currently.
okay.
It's what, that 60,000 is basically what Ben's fee.
Yes, sir. So it's a retainer, and then anything above and beyond that. So that's taken into consideration that, unless something like lawsuits in the past have come up, then that's usually sufficient.
Okay.
Okay.
MRI. MRI.
All right, along plans next.
I didn't go to enforcement, right?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Our proposed budget for next fiscal year is fairly straightforward. There's only one number that's been adjusted, and that is the line for travel. Our new building inspector, he'll be most likely traveling and taking more courses in order to obtain higher certificates. Other than that, I'm not requesting, there was in the miscellaneous, we did up that a little bit. But other than that, there are no major changes or significant changes.
So he actually gets to go somewhere to take a class instead of doing it remotely?
He does.
Wow.
He was actually able to do that. I think it was in November or December. He was able to
Wow.
go somewhere and do it in person.
I'm surprised.
And yeah, he's looking at taking some classes this summer.
Are any of those by any chance, I'm just thinking of our earlier presentation from COA, can he get anything through their programs?
I'm gonna talk to him about that later
Okay.
on, and then possibly reach out to the dean and say, I know the building inspectors in this area, they sometimes have to travel great distances to get their continuing education. So if they could offer something for the inspectors, that would be great. And only problem is, if they do it just one day, all the inspectors would want to go and nobody will be able to offer inspections that day or cover for each other. So I think that's something we're going to look into for sure. I was
Okay.
thinking the same thing. That's a
That's
good
great.
idea.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That dovetails exactly with what I suggested is with the professionals out here
Right.
trying to address those
There's a lot of money.
those educational
in those CE
requirements.
programs, and I don't think they want the government to get a hold of it. I'm just gonna,
Well, if-
we've tried to dovetail the contractor CE with inspectors because we thought that would be a perfect marriage. There's fiefdoms out there for that stuff.
Yeah, the last class he took, I believe, he had to travel to Jacksonville to do it.
Oh my goodness. Learn about smoke detectors.
Does
That's all I have, if y'all have any questions. Y'all, if that's all I have,
I
unless
have a
y'all have
question,
questions.
just one question for you.
Yes, sir.
This salaries line, does this represent an increase in compensation for the planning and code enforcement officer?
That would be a question for Bonnie.
On their salaries.
If you remember, last year we had a part-time inspector, so this will be our first year with a full-time inspector.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That covers the cost of a new inspector.
Yes, sir, for one
Full-time
full
person.
year. Yes, sir.
That'd be that 216 number.
Let me look.
It goes 210 to 216.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you're looking to not add another person for this year, or you are, or where are you guys on that?
We're not adding anyone
Okay.
at this time. We're
You're
not
gonna
planning to.
see
at
how
this
it
time.
goes with what you got right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. That's the idea.
What are your thoughts after a few months? Are you pretty happy with how things are going?
I am a permit
Because y'all are
officer.
pretty slammed.
Our permit officer and building inspector,
Slim,
we've all been
slim.
very busy, and they both are fairly new employees. Marcy just passed her 6-month period yesterday. They've both done an excellent job. I thank them very much for their hard work and their willingness to learn how things work around here, especially the permit officer. But they both stepped into their job very well, and I think getting through these past 14 months, 12 months, with as much development and things going on, if they can get through this, if the three of us can get through it without another employee, then that's most likely going to ring true for going beyond this.
Very good. Thanks,
Um,
Russ.
That's my thought right now anyway, so.
Yeah. We won't hold you to it.
Well, I was gonna say, they stepped in to replace a team that was very tough to replace, and they've done an excellent job.
I mean, that's
They've leveraged technology. I mean, it's so much easier to get a permit in Southern Shores than anywhere else. And not because there's less review, it's just they're very, very efficient.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're very
good job, Les.
fortunate to have gotten, considering everything that's going on, to have the people that we have. They could, like you just said, step in and take it and go with it.
We were really blessed to get somebody who could take the place of the gal who was here from NACS.
Yeah.
She was exceptional.
No one can replace Dabney. We can only
No, she's-
hope
she's-
to stay up with the times.
And I wanted to ask a question about that replacement. Is she serving the same role that Dabney did as LPO?
Is helping what?
LPO for CAMA LPO?
She is, yes, she is a LPO. She's gone through one training session for that.
Bingo, that's where I was heading. I
Yep.
was asking I was leading up to asking if y'all are providing her with training opportunities.
She's gone through one training session that they provided, that DCM provided. I think it was in the fall.
Okay, you're on top of that though. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I believe next is Police Department. Chief's here to answer any questions you may have. You'll see that, I think a large portion of that, there's $65,000 increase recommended over current year. A large part of that is technology. The license plate readers, the ones that we're adding have a cost, yearly cost. There was a officer that was added this current fiscal year, been unable to fill that position, as you can imagine. So that next year's got a full year's salary for that vacancy, and we got a retirement. And so when we bring somebody on, if we bring 2 new people on, that's cost of outfitting and training and so forth. But I think he can tell you if there's more than to that 65.
You're getting a workout today, Chief.
That's okay. That's what I get the big bucks for. I can tell you that the budget you're looking at is $53,950 less because of the radios that y'all approved out of this year's funds. So it'll be almost $54,000 less that you're looking at. What I can tell you is that I can give you some of the things that are increased under career development. I had to increase that $2,600 from $900 to $3,500 because we have one office that is looking to take night classes tuition. Excuse me. And we have another officer that's working towards his 2-year degree, which means that I've got to make sure the money's there if they decide to do that. Computer services, we increased that from $1,000. And printing, we increased $500, and that's because we're still advertising. We just put some more advertising out. We've got 3 candidates that we're probably going to start interviewing before too long. But the BLET here locally is graduating within, I want to say within the next month or so. So we're hoping that maybe we'll get some applicants regarding that. But I can tell you that everybody's in the same boat. The sheriff's department is like down at like 8. Nag's Head's down at least 1, possibly 2. Kitty Hawk, same. And there's slim pickings out there right now. And you know, the atmosphere for law enforcement right now, doesn't make it any easier. Our advertising is $1,500 because we're going to eventually, when Sergeant Farrell retires in October, which is what his plan is, we're going to have to start all over again and start advertising for that. Medical testing, we increased by $800 because when we do hire the 2 new people, we've got to make sure that we have the funds to do that. Supplies, we increased by about $2,000. If and when we can get it, ammunition is very expensive right now. So we increased that by $2,000. And then contracted services is excuse me, as the town manager had mentioned, part of that increase is the 2 LPRs that we're purchasing. That's going to lock our town down. They will be located on Juniper. But with that comes the additional cost for the cloud service and those types of things. So that's what that's to cover. And that's also with the equipment lease. That'll be part of the additional, equipment purchases. That's where you'll see the reduction of about, $53,950. It'll be that much less in the equipment. Everything else I have kept the same with the exception of the vehicles. We increased that by $3,000, and that's not something that we have any control over. That's what the state contract's done to it. And I think that's it. I think this was the year we increased, Bonnie, the CRO.
Yes.
Yeah, we increased the CRO. I think it was 17. And I asked to increase that to $18. And she just started yesterday. So you'll start seeing parking tickets and stuff go up pretty quick. Yeah. She's good though. She's good at what she does. And people actually say thank you after she gives them a ticket. That's pretty cool.
That's the trick.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And then again, the thermal cameras, I'll be announcing that at the next council meeting. But we actually received that. I'm just waiting for a clear invoice that comes back paid, and then we'll be reimbursed for that $24,000. And then if this budget is passed for police department, I'm looking at filing for another grant for $40,000 to see what we can get as far as equipment.
So those are potential reimbursables, right?
Yeah, I just got to show it on a line item that it's there.
It's an expense.
Yep, and then they'll reimburse us if we're fortunate. Any other questions?
Are you happy with the LPRs in terms
Yes.
of the information they give you? Okay.
Very much so.
So you're adding 2 to just that one street, just Juniper?
Yeah, then the town will be locked in. We have them on NC 12, as you
Right.
know, and we also have one at the end of the town line that we share with Duck.
Right.
And we also have 2 over by the fire department, by the school. So this way Juniper will have everything locked in. And there's certain things that I haven't been able to report to you because they're under investigation, but it's helped with a lot of our drug activity.
Okay.
Because we know who's coming and who's going. And we've recovered 2 or 3 stolen vehicles. So has Duck.
Oh, wow.
For like Virginia Beach, where they'll go through and it'll take a quick snapshot of it. And the officers that are working, it immediately hits their mobile data terminal and tells them that vehicle just passed. And pretty quick at catching them.
Indicated it was stolen.
That's correct. Yep. And a couple of them were warrants that were for wanted people that we stopped the vehicle, unfortunately. They weren't driving it. It was the brother-in-law that didn't know they had warrants on his brother, and it's like, but yet they've paid off tremendously for us. Yes.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Anybody, no further questions.
Next on page 7 is the streets, bridges, beaches, and canals. And we've got the 1,123,689 listed under Hillcrest. But that's just because that was the next street in the list. Now, I believe what the plan is to wait, find out what we get back from the pavement condition study, which we should have next month. And then we'll have that amount of money, which if you were to say we can do Hillcrest, this is the engineer's estimate to do that. Or we can kind of evaluate what the results are and then determine. Everything else I think is what it traditionally is.
We've done all the engineering work on Hillcrest except for that final little piece between Wax Myrtle and 12, I think.
That's what he's working on now. I don't know. It's going to give me a reason to check in with him when we're done to find out where he is on that, but he's-
We ordered that to be
Yeah.
done, correct? And so
yeah, he's working on it.
yeah.
I just don't know how far he's.
And we budgeted for that already,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Okay, yeah.
So you're right. That would give you the ability to go from
Good number.
Hickory all the way to 12 with that project.
Do you anticipate us like needing a special meeting after the pavement condition study comes and to try to make this decision and get it done and put it into
How
motion?
about the traffic committee?
You will need, I think, a presentation from the engineers that did this so that they can fully explain to you their evaluation, the rationale, what it means to be fair, and then the CIP, what it means to get from fair to good. I think that will be, and then in the CIP, they're going to lay out based on the condition of the streets, what they see as a priority for these funds. And so I don't think you'll have to have a special meeting to do that. I mean, you'll have to have a meeting for them to make the evaluation, but you won't have to have a special meeting to determine how you're going to spend those funds.
Okay.
You can do that in August at a council meeting.
And if there's some sort of difference of professional opinion between our town engineer and our consultant, do we have a way to proceed through that?
Our town
Potentially.
engineer, I mean, he's not doing road bores and some of the same
No, he's
analysis.
not.
It's not
No.
apples to, and I think he would, I don't want to speak for him. I think his opinion is what the council's opinion is
Okay.
on street priority.
Well, as far as the town engineer goes, it makes me think that once we get the report from the consultant, then we can have a capital improvements meeting and then prioritize these streets again, bring it back to council. So we're making the decisions on which ones to proceed with based on more than the report and also more than our own town engineer. Does that sound like a likely scenario where we get their report, then we have a capital improvements committee meeting?
It seems like that was thinking back, that was what the plan was. We kind of put the capital committee on hold until we got these results.
Yeah.
And so I think the next step in the process was to reconvene that group and share with them
Okay.
that rationale. But the study, I mean, I still would like for y'all to be presented by the consultants.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Now, but, just as you pointed out, with the committee could recommend X, Y, Z, and y'all go with A, B, C. So
Right.
Okay. Thanks. The financial windfall you referred to a little while long ago, can that be used for any of this infrastructure?
yes, well,
In, like,
yes.
not that, you explained it, we could use it for the amount that we
Took
took
out.
out of the budget before, but is it restricted to just money we didn't spend when we could have spent it, or is it
That's where it gets a little,
hazy?
yeah, because the anything that we can show that we had to reduce the budget, we cut out of the budget because of concerns over COVID, that's covered. And that 450 is, you know, the big one. But there's also, you can do improvements to public facilities as well. And that's another thing that we had talked about doing, were the upgrades to this building, Public Works and Town Hall. We could use the funds for that. And, you know, that, I think we had talked about, we put it out to bid, we only got one bid, it was way over, and we've kind of put that on hold. So
Right.
we could use some of those funds for something like that as well.
Okay.
Most of the projects are, though, they're the kind of the categories you have to fit into are dealing with health-related issues and essential personnel, very specifically wastewater, water project, water, wastewater, broadband. So it's, you know, communities like ours, I think there's ways. I think they just aren't as obvious as, you know, replacing $1 million worth of asbestos water lines. You know, some of those no-brainer things just don't pop up for us.
Okay.
Public Works, page 8. Come on up. This is a slight decrease. If you have any questions, David's here.
Well, my first one is, I see we had a decrease in salaries. Did we not have? How did that happen? How did that happen?
I had the same question exactly. Am I seeing this thing right?
We're not going to pay someone this year.
Yeah,
No,
well,
actually-
I didn't think David was being
Actually,
benevolent.
when we started last year's budget, we had the director, the supervisor, 3 maintenance tech positions, and 2 part-time. One of the part-time guys left. One of the other part-time guys filled a full-time vacancy position. And this year, David said that the crew is doing so well that we can get by with just a seasonal position from like Memorial Day to Labor Day. So that's why. So it's
Okay.
less positions.
I mean, it's great, but didn't understand the whole philosophy.
Yeah, the others picked up the slack where it was needed, so able to save a little money and space.
Are you going to be able to hire a seasonal person?
I really hope so.
Okay. You haven't started looking yet?
No, not yet. not yet.
Okay.
They're just gonna get some of them off the couch.
The contracted services, for your department, what does that relate to?
That is no left turn.
Okay.
So it's going from 3 weekends to 8.
Okay, that explains that.
So I'm looking at the budget highlights in the meeting packet from today, and you've got $24,000 in there for shoreline stabilization. I guess that's directly from Dare County.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the beach grass that we put.
Yeah. And what are we going to do? Because are we going to try to
I think what we would do is
time that with,
either tie it in or see if we can bank it.
okay,
See if we can hold off until, you know, since the project would just, as Ken said today, instead of dunes, we're going to have
yeah.
sand fence, but we could try and either use beach grass if we can't fit it into that contract.
Mhm.
Or I think we could, under the circumstances, have 48,000 the following year, rather than adding 20.
Can that money be used for something other than the beach grass? Or is it designated? I mean,
think
like,
it's
can
beach
it
grass
be
and
used to put
fence.
sand fencing up?
Sand fence and beach grass, I think.
Sand fencing would be included?
Yeah. Those are the only 2 things I know we could use the money
Okay.
for.
David, you've got the contracted services. Is that for the barrels for the no left turn?
Yes, sir.
Is that different from what you have, Chief, under contracted services or what?
His is the IT for the LPRs.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
Is there a backhoe in here, David?
Not this year.
Not this year.
Well, it just depends what size backhoe you're going to get.
It's a John Deere. I'm pretty
Well, I know, but there's various models depending on what you want to pay.
sure. Somebody told me this morning that nothing rusts like a deer.
That's true. It's ingrained in you if you work for them.
Thank you. I don't have any more.
When you guys, we already approved for you to purchase the piece of equipment that you wanted, right? The one that's mentioned in this write-up?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's
Yeah.
already,
That'll be.
A done deal.
That'll be in
that'll be out.
this year's budget,
Yeah. that won't
not
be
the
for
one
next
we're
year.
in, not the future.
Yeah, it'll
That
be
was the-
reduced by that amount.
Yeah.
Was that the dingo?
Yeah,
Whatever that was, skid steer type thing.
okay. I got you. Okay.
So I'm sorry, David, is that in this budget or not? The dingo?
It'll be out.
Okay,
That 53 will come out and that'll just be 7.
okay.
It'll be in the 2021 budget, not the 21-22.
Right.
Have you ordered it yet?
I've already ordered it.
When's it to be delivered?
Hopefully within the next month. Hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a specialty type machine.
yeah, it's not like Amazon. Yeah, I don't have anything else.
I don't have any more.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
I wouldn't mind asking, do you ever get people stop you in the streets and people that
Yes.
live here and say, so what are you guys doing? Or you guys are doing a great job? Or what, I mean, what kind of feedback do you get from people that you see out there
Uh,
typically?
Mostly positive.
Okay.
Occasionally we get people that'll be upset that we mowed the right of way in front of their house.
Okay,
Occasionally, but most people are generally happy with what we do and
okay,
thank the guys. And
yeah,
occasionally I hear about somebody that's upset, but it's not very often.
okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think your folks doing a really good job
Thank you.
in almost every respect.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of the way we look and the way we're taking care of our streets.
Please pass that on to them.
I will.
So keep it a secret. Otherwise, it'll get a big
thanks,
head.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Let's see, page 9, sanitation. I think you're aware we've increased the tipping fees for the landfill and for recycling just simply because of the volume. One thing I did want to kind of point out that's come up after the fact, under the limb and branch removal, Mark Fletcher met with Bonnie and I last week, and he's in right now in year 3 of a 4-year contract. But he's making a request for an increase because of 5 issues. The cost of dump fees for the disposal of chips, limbs, debris have increased. Cost of diesels increased. The workman's compensation and general liability has increased. He's having a hard time, as everyone is, with employees' wages. And then there's a lot of volume, increased volume of new residents and construction has added to the services. So, this kind of it's asking for an increase in the middle of a contract. And I mean, I think we all agree Mark does an excellent job. But that's one thing I wanted to make you all aware in case we did recommend any of this increase be included, then it's either going to add to, or we're going to have to find it from somewhere else to offset this inclusion. But this just came to our attention So I wanted to make you aware this request is out there.
How much,
How much was it?
how much
It's hard to
is it?
say because with the diesel fuel, and there may be other ways that we could, rather than just paying for that, there could be some type of pay as we go. You know, if we could somehow set a rate that if it goes to this, then this, so we're just not paying an assumed rate. But the other ones, I think, somewhere around $20,000.
An issue I have is I see them, why they do it, I don't understand it, leaving those trucks idle all day long if they not needed for the attachment. Now, that is not helping the environment any, and if he had a newer vehicle with a new tier engines in it, they do shut them down. You let them idle for, you can set it 5-10 minutes and then it'll shut down. And that's just consuming fuel when they're sitting there idling and not doing anything. And I see it, and he's not the only one to do it. I think there was an old adage way back when the vehicle was hard to start, was easier to run, but not in today's world.
Right.
And I just, when I see them sitting there idling, it just bothers me.
If there's any increase, that could be a condition.
Well,
set upon-
yeah, I mean, that's burning up fuel, that's not doing anything.
Right.
Where are they parked in idling?
Well, they've done jobs for me and they'll sit there all day, the truck will.
Oh, okay.
And it doesn't have the grapple on it picking anything up that they would need it immediately.
What would be the consequences if we just say no?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think Mark's going to break the contract, but at some point I think it just becomes where he's maybe losing money.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to put him in a position where he has to walk away because of that reason. Now, but like I said, this is in the middle of a contract. This is on the latter end of a contract, and you don't customarily renegotiate before it's due.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he'd walk away. I think we'd see this and more maybe in the next following renewal, but that's an option.
Could we split the difference?
Possibly. Well,
If he's asking for 20, can we do it
Find
for
a way to
10?
tailor the services to meet the existing budget rather than just limit scope or something of that nature.
yeah, and there may be other ways, that we could do that. Really though, I didn't want to surprise you with this at the public hearing
I honestly don't know the answer to this question. Is his a competitively bid contract?
it was competitively bid, I guess, in 4 years ago.
Okay. And we had multiple bidders?
Yes.
Is it one of those that you have to choose not based on price, but rather qualifications or?
This was based on price.
Price. Okay,
Yeah.
so it was an RFP based on price. He was the low bid.
That's right.
Okay.
I kind of like your idea of tying the increase to some kind of sliding scale based on the cost of diesel.
Can I speak to how we did it in the past?
Can we,
How we did it in the past with Mark, when the diesel went so high back, I don't know, I guess it's been 6-8 years ago. If it was, for instance, if he paid, it doesn't matter how much he burned, it's what he paid for it at the pump, whether he got 1 gallon or 50. And it was like from $2.99 to $3.08, it was 2% of the draw amount. And it was a sliding scale like that, 2%, 3%, right on up. And then, so he would have to tell me every week, bi-weekly, when he got the draw, how much he paid for his diesel that week. And that's how it was computed.
could we do the same thing with tipping fees?
We already pay a fuel surcharge, that's correct, on tipping fees. They used to be, the county used to pay for them, now they're passing them on to us. So, and it's a different amount every month depending on the cost of fuel. So we're paying that now. That's part of the increase in the tipping fees. More tonnage, but also a fuel surcharge.
I'm sorry, what's causing the increase in the tipping fees right now?
The increase in tipping fees is the increase in volume. So we are up about 20%. So we have more tonnage going to the landfill. So between that and the fuel surcharge, our landfill tipping fees are up.
And the contract with the sanitation pickup, they're paying for their tipping fees over there, right? Or we're paying them for the amount that they haul.
That is correct. So Bay picks up the trash and they take it to ARSWA, the Albemarle Regional Solid Waste Authority, as we have to under contract.
Right.
And then when they get there, our portion is weighed and we pay, it's about $76 and some change per ton. And our tonnage is up about 20%.
And they'll get a ticket that'll say the tonnage and what they paid, and then that's submitted.
Correct.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting at is, rather than have a line item in here like this, can we tie the two together on a scale? Like if you have 1,000 tons, well, you're paid basically, $1 per ton. Yeah, I'm making this up, obviously. But rather than having to come back with increasing contract amounts.
Then there's an incentive to pick up other people's trash or limbs.
Right. Well, see,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. And what Mark
okay.
shared with us is there is much more contractors doing work and putting it out by the road. If the guy, like if Kevin, our code enforcement officer, if he sees it while he's out, or David and the guys see it and it's a contractor, they stop and let them know nicely that, they're responsible for taking it away. But if they don't see it when it happens, and so Mark's and David verified that the amount he's seeing out on the streets has just really increased. And what Mark used to do for the size of the pile that, whatever that is, it takes about 15 minutes. And before he would chip 15 minutes and he would just go. But he said now that all the piles, he said if it's taken 20, 25 minutes, he just stays there and does it. So he's doing more than he really should. And now his bookkeeper has told him he's operating in the red. So.
What measure we have to take to go ahead and just give him what he's asked for?
It would be more fund balance. So when I fit, so the amount of the fund balance. So if you wanted to do that, it's about $25,000, I think, is about what he was asking for. So that would be additional that you would take out of fund balance, or you can try and find it somewhere in the budget. We do have some storm debris money in there. That's like $20,000 that if you wanted to try and move that, or the brush trimming, something like that. But then, if an undeclared storm comes,
Right.
then we don't have any money to clean up the town, then we could come to you later. But those are your options. You could either take it out of fund balance or find it somewhere else, or. Right.
They just kind of roll through the town, chipping what's on the side of the street.
Correct. So they do a sector. Yes, sir. So the town is divided into 4 sectors and they do a sector each week. And he said that used to what would happen, it would take him a day, maybe a day and a half, but it was beneficial because he would pick up jobs from the citizens in town. He said now it's taken him about 3 days to do the work, and he doesn't have time to do any other work. So it's hurting him both on that side and the other. So that's kind of what he was sharing with Cliff and I.
I've been seeing an incredible abuses of what people are putting out there for him to chip up, which.
I couldn't get him to chip anything in my house, so I'm confused.
Did you have vines in it?
No, I burned it.
Well,
Open burning.
I said that because it may be that maybe the town needs to go buy periodically and try and enforce how much. I mean, people are putting humongous piles out there. And even if Mark stopped after 15 minutes, you still got a huge pile out there until the next month.
Right. And that was his comment, that, you know, if he only chipped for 15 minutes, he would be leaving a lot of stuff along the right of ways. And that's another thing.
That's a
when
teachable moment.
And when he first started this, they would allow them to dump the chips in town. We don't allow that anymore. So that's another expense that he has. When this contract was originally entered into, he was able to get rid of the chips here in town, but he's not doing that now. He's having to pay to get rid of them.
Why can't he dump it in town?
Wes, you want?
Yeah.
Has to be out of the right of way on private
You
property.
can dump it on private property, but not on the right of way. And that's where the fine line is.
But
There
yeah,
were
I
also
think it
quite a
was being
number
done
of
in the
people
right of
who
ways
were having
before.
huge piles delivered and they would be there 6 months
Mhm.
later, you know,
On their property.
either on their property or on the right of way. To me, it looked like it was in the right of way. But there was,
All kinds of things going on in people's property that don't look sightly.
yeah.
I think in my mind, the question is, is this somebody you want to keep as a subcontractor or someone working for the town? If you do, I think you have to accommodate to some degree. And I don't know where that line is drawn, Cliff, but I think it's.
Yeah, I should have said at the beginning, I just want to make you aware, I got to come up with an answer to fix this. You're probably more aware now than I had intended, but this is something we got to work through and figure out how we're going to recommend to you we address it. And
Well,
fast.
that looks like what he's talking about. There's not a lot of it that he has control over, other than the diesel use, consumption of the diesel fuel. Workman's comp, he doesn't have any control on it. To a degree would, but those rates keep going up all the time, even though you may have a very good rating.
So he wants to be about 160,000, where he'd like to be, best I can tell. I see no problem with it. The council can make that decision.
Yeah, I've got to, we'll come back for recommendation.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's
Work through
let
that.
you do your,
Because I'm not even 100% sure what I'd be asking for. If you were inclined to make a decision, what I would be asking you to do, so.
okay.
Let's see, next is fire department. Chief couldn't be here. He had a prior family engagement, but the request remained at 625, 358. A large portion of his increase is due to utilities. He jumped the cost. I think he missed the mark. He'll admit, he said that he underestimated the cost of the utilities for operating the new facility. So that's part of the reason why he's wanted to stay flat where he is. There was some capital equipment that was bought out of this current year. He's got some capital in next year's as well, but whatever the capital doesn't make up, he's making up with the additional need for utilities. About $31,000 more than I think was originally budgeted. And I'll just remind you, in 1819, I think is when the contract was renewed. At that time, the annual allocation in the contract, it says, could not go below 545,914. So if you see on page 10, it stayed there 1819, it stayed there 1920, and then it went up in 2021. Part of that was capital, 44,000 of that was capital, increase in utilities. There was additional people cost. And then this year, it's pretty much the same thing. The reasons for staying where he is.
Radios are still in the budget. I see of 25.
Yeah, and that he's still hopeful. I mean, he doesn't need those radios for another, I think it's 3 years.
2025 is the deadline.
Is that right? 25? So he's got time. And so if we've recommended 25,000 towards that $150,000, and we could keep that in capital reserve until we find out either what comes first, time to spend it, or he's awarded a grant. Just keeps it neater instead of, he gets the grant and then we got to work out getting our money back.
Okay.
Any questions about the fire station? Fire department?
No.
Ocean Rescue, I think we aware of that contract was signed last month. Cemetery remains the same. Talked about the capital reserve, 20,000 for canals, 750 for beach nourishment. And those are the department line items. Should we roll on to health insurance?
Just, if the MSD is going to affect, or they are in effect, and they have tax rates, will they show up on the revenue page as a
Yes.
revenue, and then the expenses show up in this capital reserve fund?
Exactly. Yeah, it'll show up under the ad valorem. It'll have MSD1, MSD2.
And the general fund will just increase.
Right, the general fund amount will increase.
Can we
But we
line
can-
item that increase separately? So it's
We will,
not the 1 and 2, but the town-wide contribution to beach nourishment.
that we
Probably only
can,
matters to me, but.
I think we can, I want to make that clear. I want to be able to clearly show that. And I don't know that we can show that as a separate revenue, but we can show the equivalent being transferred to the capital reserve fund.
Okay. Right. That's.
Because instead of collecting 1958, we'd collect 23. And all of that would show up in one number.
Put an asterisk on the bottom.
But now, but we can, it can show on the tax bill.
Yeah,
It's
I
separate.
understand that because I've seen kitty hawks.
Right, we can do that. So when you get your tax bill, it'll show townwide MSD or beach nourishment, and then depending on if you're in 1 or 2 MSDs, it'll show that amount as well. So we could potentially have 5 lines of taxes.
It's like a cell phone bill. Or regulatory recapture. Health insurance.
In the packet, you'll see there's a little chart there that shows the meeting packet. The rate increases that we've experienced since 2018, it averages out to about a 1.61% increase yearly. 18, 19, and 20, we saw an increase. This present fiscal year, there was a 9% decrease. And then this year, we got hit with a 10% increase. Because we're in a small pool, it's not our claims that help or hurt us, it's the entire pool's claims. If you look at this in 1 year, it's concerning, but if you look at it over the last 5, it balances out to, I think, adjustable amount. But health insurance is always something, and Bonnie can talk more about how she shops this and HSA versus HRA and the process we go through to determine that we need to stick with where we are and pay for this increase.
So when I got the rates, I got on the phone with our broker and I told him, I said, okay, it might be time for us to go to a high deductible, either an HRA or an HSA. A HRA is employer owned, an HSA is employee owned. The difference in that is if an employee leaves, an HSA employee owned, it goes with them. Employer owned does not. So I checked both. And basically, there is another municipality here in Dare County that does that. And basically what you do is, just for simplicity's sake, you pay for a $5,000 deductible plan, and then the town will put $2,500 in. So technically it makes it a $2,500 plan to the employee. So I looked at several different ones of those through Blue Cross Blue Shield, through Cigna, those. And by the time we contributed the money to help offset the large increase on the deductible and that sort of thing, we weren't saving any money. We got a quote from United Healthcare. They came in higher. The HSA and the HRAs were higher. And we did get one from Cigna that was lower, but for the employees that cover their dependents, it was tremendously more than what they're paying now. And so it was about 8% increase, so it wasn't that much less, but it was much more of a burden on the employees. So that's why we stayed with the Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And that also, our benefit changed. Our total out of pocket went up another $1,000. I mean, we've done everything that we can to try to, but it's a $2,000 deductible, $6,000 maximum out of pocket, 80/20 plan.
Do you happen to know what the town of Duck does?
The town of Duck has a very rich plan. They have a $1,000 deductible for theirs. And see, so the other towns, of course, pay about 60% of the dependent coverage. We don't do that. In lieu of, we paid the $650 for the cafeteria money for them to help offset the cost of that. But I still can't figure out, and Cliff asked the manager the same thing, how did you get a $1,000 deductible and their premiums are very low? I don't know how they've done that.
You know who the company they're working with?
No, did you ask that, Cliff? Who the broker is?
He wouldn't share it with you, huh? Let's cut that one off.
He didn't know yet.
Because it's not a problem. I don't think he's dug into that.
Yeah.
Just might be something for us to try to
Well, yeah, find that
hitch our
company.
train to, since theirs out of pocket is saving them some money.
Okay, so the next thing on the list, number 5, is the state retirement contributions. A few years ago, the board, the state retirement, they have a board who comes up with the rates of what they think, the returns are going to be and that sort of thing. And so for long range planning, they said, okay, we're going to go with a graduated plan where it increases 0.25% every year. That is now catching up with us. So it started out at 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, that sort of thing. And you can see the last 2 years on this 5-year is when it went 0.25, and then they're playing catch up. So the employer rates are set by the board. I mean, that is to help offset, any rate of returns that they do or don't make. They give increases to the retirees, that sort of thing. So those rates are 11.39 for general employees and 12.05 for law enforcement officers, and we have no control over those. The pay and classification study. Okay.
Is this plan fully funded?
Is it?
State retirement.
Is it fully funded?
Yeah, 100% funded. Most of them aren't, but I was just wondering. It's an FYI for me.
Yeah.
Their
I'll find out.
press release from February indicates that it's in your book.
Yeah, I was looking here. I didn't see it.
They brag that they are,
Another hour, I would think, anyway.
Another hour?
Just guessing.
This is nice.
pension fund is one of the best funded in the country.
Yeah, that doesn't say it's.
AAA bond rating,
that
but
doesn't-
they
doesn't-
lowered their expected rate of return, and that pretty much means that employers have to pay more.
Yeah, and that's where pensions got in the trouble, what they assumed. was going to be their rate of return.
Yeah. But the amount that the employee contributes hasn't ever changed. Is that a legislative act requirement? I would think so too, right?
Yeah, I think
I would think so. It's been 6% since I started.
Forever,
Yeah.
since the dinosaurs walked on the planet.
I mean, I think it's been that way for a while.
Mm-hmm. Just curious, sorry.
We take a 5-minute break.
absolutely.
The mayor
You
would
okay
like to
with that?
break. Yeah, sure.
I'm not gonna gavel it down. Just
Okay.
meet back here at 2:32 or something like that.
Okay. These meetings are getting longer.
Yeah, we were,
Are they?
our objective was to shorten them, if I remember correctly,
We've done a good job. In general.
in general.
You get an outlier once in a while. Budget.
15 minutes sounds better.
Okay, 15 minutes. We'll do it in a Geico.
You all set? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so pay and classification, it's in the budget, recommended at 89,729. Of that, 72,567 is salary, 5,500 is FICA, and 11,611 is retirement. Back in, I guess it was February of 20, what was recommended by the consultant was 57,000 in total salaries and $70,000 total, including FICA and retirement. What I did was there's a hybrid approach that I've taken here in recommending this study to you. The pay study recommended what they call Compa Ratio, and what that means is if the market says you should be making $50,000 and you're making 48, then that is a division, and it comes up to 0.98 or point something, and everybody wants to be at 1. So if you're below that, you're below the market. If you're above it, you're above the market. So that whole idea is to get the math to divide to get to 1. The other part of this was there's a recommendation that all employees that are hired at the starting salary should be at the midpoint within 8 to 10 years. And what I've recommended is that they should be at the midpoint at the latter end of that by year 10. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 employees that were not at the midpoint of their salaries. So I think we do a good job of getting people here. We hire them at a good rate, but they don't advance maybe as fast as they should. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 employees that were pretty much where they needed to be. And so for those employees, what I've recommended is the cost of living adjustment. Cost of living, the CPI in January was 1.4%. So that is what is recommended for them. And then we had 2 employees who their market, what the market said they should be was greater than their years of service. So if I were to combine all that and put it into a recommendation, that's how I came to the 89,000. In 2019, we're still operating off the 2019 pay scale. So the starting salary in 2019 is what it would be today. And in that scale, of whatever the pay scales are that goes out for the minimum and the maximum hadn't been adjusted since 2019. So what I've done is included 2.5% to that 2019 scale to get us in line with where we should be today. Usually what happens is, our market is more or less greatly Dare County. And what I'm hoping is if we can get on this scale, we got two towns that are introducing their pay studies now. And, each time that happens, it seems like the goalpost has moved a little bit more. This is our first study since 2013. This is the first time we've done a study like this since 2013. But if we can get employees on a scale where they're moving 2% each year, hopefully that gets us to where, had we done that maybe in 2013, those 11 employees who aren't at the midpoint would have been at the midpoint. The other thing is, while not in this year, I'd like to next year recommend that we have a pot of merit money, so that if Sheila and I are both hired as police officers today at the minimum salary, if both of us come to work and we do our job in 10 years, we'll both be at the midpoint. But she's going to work a lot harder than I do. She's going to do a much greater job and excel. And so she should move along that scale faster than I do. And that would be the intent of the merit money. And so a maximum any employee could receive in one given year with the merit would be an additional 3%. So on top of that would be maximum of a 5% increase. But that is not included in this. That would be something that I'd put in next year's recommended. So I think that is in a nutshell how I got to this amount of money. Anything to add?
What did she just say? I'm sorry.
There's usually when you do something like this, you look at, the pay scale would change. There's some job descriptions that'll change. There's some, it's been, I don't know that we've had anyone externally look at our pay policy, the policies, not the pay. We just obviously did that, but the policies. Monica can speak to this better than I can, but we'd like to include a review of our policy. Personnel policies. Thank you. I kept saying pay, but that would take to make sure that all of our policies are meeting fair labor standards and, the employment law and that sort of thing. That is 7.
Yes, sir, and we have money this year.
Yeah, that's something that if you approved, we could take out of this year's budget to make sure all of our policies have had a third party review.
And that's never been done?
That was done in 2013.
2013, okay.
Yes, ma'am. And so there's been a lot of policies since then that have been updated. We've done some administratively, but the personnel policy, the town council has to approve. And going ahead and updating the pay scale, the job descriptions, that sort of thing, getting the salaries in line. I told Cliff that's something I would want to do. So I have kind of done, had 2 telephone interviews with 2 different individuals and found the person that I really like. He's on board with what I'm wanting to do and some policies that we don't have that we should have and updated and that sort of thing. And so since we were not able to do any of our traveling this year and all of our training has been online, I asked Cliff because he can move the money within our budget. But we wanted to bring that to your attention that, when it's finalized, it'll come to the council for your approval.
Okay.
Is that a closed session meeting or is that an open meeting?
No, sir, it would be open because it's just personnel policy, so there's no employees' names or anything like that.
I was talking about more the compensation part of it, when it gets to that.
Well, I guess we're at that now. I mean, I have a list. I mean, if the council wants to see, we do have a list of how much everyone is getting.
We're not setting that on an individual basis, though. We're just setting the department allocations for salaries and managers allocations.
Correct.
Now, on these allocations for salaries, forgive me if I've missed this, but does this compensate for, as I recall during our last budget, the 2021 budget, we cut any pay raises for the staff.
Right, so
Is this
as Cliff
accounting?
was saying, and so what we did was the pay scale that we used for 19 and 20 is how we have, is what we have used to hire new hires since that time.
Right.
The pay study recommended salaries that were a slight adjustment, but we didn't adopt those. So what we did, like he said, we used a 2.5% and increased those to kind of bring our salaries in line. I have also sent around to all the other Dare counties myself and updated those salaries and that sort of thing to make sure that we were in line, and we pretty much are if we could do the 2.5%. So yes, sir, those have. And moving forward, then we should be good.
Okay, because that was a substantial and noticed sacrifice that the town staff made last year.
But the town staff did, I mean, we did get $1,000 one-time
Yeah.
bonus.
Yes.
So, I mean, we did get something and, staff was appreciative of that and recognized, that was something that you all did in, the times of a pandemic, and it was certainly appreciated, but this is trying to, like you said, get us on track moving forward.
Okay,
The-
just
the-
get
the-
it back on track.
Yes, sir.
At this policy review, you said you've been talking to a couple of people. What sort of fee do they charge?
I haven't been able to get an exact one of them, once I asked for, some recommendations, they hadn't had enough experience that I felt comfortable with municipalities and that sort of thing. Theirs was more with the private sector. And the last one, I've heard, he is an attorney. He used to teach at the UNC School of Government. I've had him for several of my courses there. And he's done several. And he told me that he's thinking that I sent him what we have, and he and I talked for an hour yesterday about what we were looking for, what I wanted, what he could offer, and that sort of thing. And he said he thinks about 7,000. And we have the money in our travel budget this year. We were going to go ahead and just transfer it to our contracted services line and go ahead and get him to do that so that everything is fresh.
That's good.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yes, sir.
I think up next was streets, but I think we're past that, that discussion. The cut through traffic, I just wanted to take a minute to make sure the 8 no left turn weekends, that's what's in the budget. We had talked about potentially some other measures, but right now that's all that's budgeted. So if there was direction or guidance from you all about wanting to do something else, we would need to budget for that.
What date does that start?
June 26th, if that's a Saturday.
That's the start.
26th, 27th, or 25th, 26th.
Yeah, that's a Saturday.
Yep.
So if we do decide to close off Hillcrest, Wax Myrtle, and Seos temporarily, we would have to allocate monies to get the Jersey barriers?
Well, if in worst case, or if hopefully we could borrow some. I mean, I think we would need 8 of those barricades and signs that say local traffic only. So the expense is minimal, but I think we may not have to budget anything.
May not
But
have
it
a
would-
place what?
Anything, if we can borrow them.
Oh.
Otherwise, I mean, we'd have to buy the barriers if we can't borrow them for some reason from DOT.
Okay,
But there's if I can borrow them, we can get them pretty quick. If we have to order them, I think it's about a 2-week lag time.
okay.
So you're asking us, if we want to pursue
Yeah, I guess if you
a
want to do
temporary
any of,
block on those 4 intersections with some sort of local traffic only type of thing that you can still drive around if you have to.
Right.
Um,
yeah, and that's important. I mean, they're really not enforceable.
Right.
You hope that people obey, but
yeah.
it's unconstitutional to stop someone
Right.
that you don't think belongs on a street.
We can.
And I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Local traffic only signs? Man, those were tried out in this town before. They're worthless.
No, it would be in the middle of the
Physical
blockade.
barrier.
Oh,
of the
okay,
barrier. It would
okay.
say local traffic only.
Yeah,
Okay, I
Big
got
No.
bridge outs.
not putting another sign up that nobody pays attention to. You got to make it a little harder.
And it may be,
But have you figured out whether or not we can borrow them? 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, if we decide to do it, it's gonna be, okay, we're 3rd week of July or 2nd week of July. I mean, we have a 2-week lead time. It might not be very useful to order. I
think
think
I
that would be determined. If we can borrow it, that'd be preferable.
we could make something work.
I mean, I've got software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the situation with the state as far as their signage?
They've agreed to putting their sign on the west side of Currituck Bridge, alerting folks before they get on the bridge, no left turn. Kitty Hawk and DOT have both agreed to the no left turn events.
Are they
Get
changing?
the red arrow on
Yeah.
the
Yes, ma'am.
signal light.
And the hours, decide on the hours yet for
Um,
the weekend?
well, I think we're planned from 10 to 6, but that's also adjustable. The company will be here from 8 to 8. We have them from 8 to 8.
So we can adjust it.
The only question would be on Sunday, what time does church is over there
Exactly.
start?
What did we do Sunday last year?
What time is church on Sunday?
12 to 6?
10:30, they have an 8:30 service and they have a 10:30 service. I'd have to find, I don't go to the church that often, but I'll have to find out from them what their summer service hours are. But, you
We can
know,
adjust.
they have quite a number of people that come over from Currituck.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
It's just, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be to get those out there. With the traffic building up, trying to get those in place.
Yeah, that was, and I had a little bit of an issue with it last year, watching them try to set up, I think, too late in the day, but.
Maybe change it to 11.
I'm just fine with 10.
I'm fine with 10 too, but
I do appreciate you all saying, we want to find some middle road there. I'd set up at 8. Paying for an 8 to 8, I'd have them up there 8 to 8. but That's me.
Only other thing I had on your list was beach nourishment tax rates.
Let's get into it.
I don't know that you need me to tell you anything else about.
Well, we had lots of emails telling us what we should do.
Philosophically, I've heard, I think, 3 things. 1, everybody pays the same rate. 2, you base it on the percentage of benefit. And then 3 is it's based on the percentage of value. And then you can set the rates. I'll say this, that, at 3.42 for the town, the 1 cent in the town-wide raises 162, 1 cent on the oceanfront raises 29. So you can see the only way you're going to make up any ground is raising the town-wide. Because, going a penny or 2 on the oceanfront's not going to have nearly the impact. So if the goal is to try and get the oceanfront down, then it's going to just simply raise the town-wide up.
So if we go to 4 cents on the, we've talked about this a number of times. If we go to 4 cents as a town rate, 4 or 4 1/4, let's use 4 for starters. What would that do to MSD1 and MSD2? Or maybe we talked about MSD2 at 1%, but 1 cent.
I'll pull up that chart.
that's a handy spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I hope it's accurate.
Just go check the formulas. That's the key.
Okay, so you'll see down at the bottom, this, we got to raise $1,024,000, and that's another option. If the minimum you're going to have 500, I don't know if you want to go down that route or not, but you're contributing $1 million of fund balance. There's that option as well as an additional contribution. But let's see, if you were right now, this is what I've recommended: 12.3 and 3.42. So if you were to go to 4 cents, it would raise the revenue up to $1,169,000, and then you could start lowering the oceanfront. Let's get down to 9. If you left MSD, so if it that would be 15 cents on the oceanfront, 7 cents in MSD2, and 4 cents townwide, and you generate the revenue you need.
That's the direction I was hoping to see us go. Something similar to that, because I think it's just now becoming apparent that when we say, and I'm making numbers up here, if on MSD1, we increase their rate 10 cents per $100 of value, then they're not picking up that they're also paying all the other taxes, including for MSD2
Right. And the town-wide tax,
and the town-wide tax.
yes.
There's,
They're picking up the 15 cents. 8, 3, and 4.
no matter which way you shake it, the MSD 1 and 2 is going to be paying a little bit more. So the discussion is really how much does the rest of the town pay? Which I think is fair. Not putting all of this off on the MSD 1 and 2.
Well, that's what he's shown us. Is
Yes.
If the town-wide tax is 4 cents, then your oceanfront's going to pay 15 with the three cents on the MSD2. And you can play with numbers and make that. I've talked to a couple of people specifically about the tax rate, and their plea to me was, can you get our rate on the oceanfront down to 12 cents total, or 13 cents total instead of 15 or 17 cents total. And I don't know how much difference it makes to a person with $1 million oceanfront home, but it makes some difference. They wouldn't talk about it. And do we have to worry about getting there? I mean, to accommodate. Well, we've heard a lot from the oceanfront property owners about their tax rate going up, and they're very emotional about it. So it's hard to tell when they're.
That's the bad part.
You're getting facts.
Yeah, the emotion is in it rather than the fact. And that's tough to deal with.
Yeah, no kidding. I think what Cliff has done up here is definitely in the right direction though, because we may not have hit that 12 cents or, 12 cents that oceanfront property was talking about, but we've reduced it down quite a bit.
But if you made the townwide tax 4 1/4, say 4.25, what does that do to your overall cost for the oceanfront?
I'm sorry.
Well, they're still going to be paying 8, 11, 15 based on that up there.
No, I'm saying if you made the tax rate, the townwide tax rate 4 1/4.
4 1/4.
Say 4 1/4, that's going to change their rate.
Yes, it would. They would lower their rate.
Right.
I can't do the math here to tell how much though.
Getting himself hooked up here.
Matt has a device that'll do that, and so does Flip. And so does Sheila probably.
Do you have a number to change?
Yeah, we want to change the town-wide to 4 1/4.
More than what, 4 1/4?
Yes.
I'd like to change the MSD2 rate from, at least from 3 to 2.
So you could do that. You could do that and have 13,000. And
You say change it from 3 to 2, is that to correspond because the townwide is increasing?
Yeah, so the MSD2 people are now going to be paying 4.25 plus 2. That's 6.25.
Yep.
So ideally, I'd like to get less between MSD2 and the townwide. I'd like to get those two numbers to be closer together. And the only way to really do that is take MSD down. I could even see taking it down to 1.
We talked about doing that.
Uh-huh.
I have.
And then they would be looking at, if we go with 4 1/4 for the town, they'd be looking at 5 1/4.
If we just went to MSD 1 and adjusted the numbers accordingly, does that open up the whole public hearing process again?
no,
But we're talking about including MSD 2 in MSD 1. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
No,
No, okay.
no, I'm
okay.
just talking about what they would be paying. If I'm a property owner in MSD 2, if I have a 1.0 tax rate because of MSD 2, I'm going to pay 1.0 plus 4.25. So I'm going to pay 5.25.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not changing the lines any.
So what's that do to the oceanfront property? We can tell you that in a second.
I would say we might need to take them to like, what, 8.5, Cliff?
you'd have to take them probably to 10.
10, okay.
Now they're at 16.25.
That's 10 plus.
Now they're
plus
at
1 plus 4.
15.25,
Yes.
which is much less than what we were at before.
Yes. Before we were at 15 and 3, now we're at 11 and 1.
Could you take them to 9.75? Because your target number is 1,024,000.
That's right. No, yeah,
Oh, you could take them to 9.5.
just about. Now that,
That's probably going to be about the bottom line.
That's 15 cents total on the MSD
You
ones.
had the biggest impact was townwide. You're going to see the most dramatic changes. If you took 4.25 to 4.5, you'd see that town,
But we're already at our target right now with 9.5, 1, and 4.25.
When you say we're already at our target.
That's 14.25 for the oceanfront.
Well, let's get him closer. Yeah,
14.75, right?
14.
Total?
Yeah,
Mhm.
14.75.
Yeah. It's higher math, so I have to have a calculator typically.
Well, I'm using my what's in here. That's it's got one battery's dead.
Mhm.
I think the townwide rate is the biggest controller because there's so many more.
That's correct.
So many more inputs.
It is the driver.
and the one that
4.5 would do what? I don't know.
I don't know, at
3
this point,
cents
based
in the
on
red
what's
on
up
our
there
budget
right now,
this year.
I'd rather see them increase MSD to a penny and bring it down for
Well,
whatever
think
we,
about debt proportion. You got 1,024,000 you gotta make up.
Mhm.
How much should the town, exclusive of the 2 MSDs pay? How much should MSD2, exclusive of MSD1 pay? And how much should MSD1? The cents, we can sit here and rearrange the cents all day long. What is the debt proportion breakdown that we would be comfortable as a council? And then maybe we'll get some feedback on that public hearing.
if I hear what you're saying right, and forgive me for how, I wasn't planning on showing you this, but if we did it based on the percentage, if out of the total value we have to generate, if MSD1 has 18% of the value, MSD2 has 17% by itself, that's taken out MSD1, and then what's left is 1,000,005, then it's 18, Oceanfront's got 18, MSD2's got 17, and Townwide's got 65, and this is what the rates would look like, 636, 308, and 409, if I heard what you said.
So
Correct.
it's setting their debt proportion.
And then I just and then the only thing that get back to is the benefit part, you know.
Right.
You're saying the MSD2 folks are,
Equal benefit,
yeah,
minus a percent.
yeah. And I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that.
I think it's a good starting point because that's the actual property value allocation in there.
Yeah.
MSD1 represents 18% of the town's value. And they pay 18% of the debt burden. That's what that shakes out.
Mhm.
Cliff, because I'm not 100% familiar. See, if I do 18%, 17, 65, I got the town, the individual properties will end up paying more than that. It should equalize to a townwide rate, like 6, 7 or something. If you allocate it upon the property values. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at up there, the 6.36.
That's the rate. That would just be
290.
at,
Their debt proportion would be 184,000 at 18%, which is a 636, but I think it's the town number that's too.
I got that too low.
Like I said, they should all equalize because it'd be the same thing as just a across the board ad valorem increase because you're taking the exact percentage of what they are in the town. But it's a starting point. Should the oceanfront pay 18% of the debt, MSD2 pay 17% of the debt, and the rest of the town pay 65% because that's the way the values are, or should it be? I'm literally throwing this out there. I'm not, 30, 20, 50, or
I think that's not a bad.
that's a policy view rather than rearranging cents and let the cents be what they are.
Well, it's part of it, but I still get back to who's benefiting.
I agree.
And I think MSD1 properties are definitely benefiting more than MSD2s.
Yeah, that's right. Keeping MSD2 at par or equal to what a townwide rate would be, I think, is a fair side of the seesaw. Well, then it's just MSD1 in the town. So they're at par with what a townwide rate would be, MSD2, and then kind of balance the
In other
ends.
words, let MSD2 be a part, just not have any tax except the town rate, townwide rate.
No, what a townwide equal rate would be,
Okay.
and across the board, which would be what, 6.8 or something like that, 6.6.
That makes sense to me. And
But because here's I don't know if this is going to be, I don't think this will be our last discussion on this, but the heartburn I'm having is there are priorities in town that are very valuable to the town, the entire town. And this is so delicate that, I mean, there's stormwater improvements, there's road improvements, there's, salary increases, there's staff hires, there's things that will benefit the entire town that we do without a doubt need to raise taxes for to continue to provide our baseline level of services. This beach nourishment is a service for the whole town in some degree. It's a service for MSD2 in some degree, and it's a dramatic service for MSD1. Now, I can see their perspective sitting on the ocean front that this is all benefits the town. But if their property were to be lost in a storm, one of those 27 storm damaged properties, the rest of the town would still have public trust beach there. I mean, it's so their benefit for nourishment, it's a service we're able to offer as a town to MSD1 largely, and then down the tier to the other groups also benefit. There's no doubt. I'll be unequivocal about that, but it's not an equal benefit. I mean, because we didn't do this, which if it puts too much of a tax burden on the entire town, that's my fear. Because there are other priorities that in my mind are better for the greater good of the town. And that's the part I'm probably struggling with the most.
that's kind of like what I'm struggling with, because I think that keeping MSD2 and bumping that up above 1 cent makes sense. And also because if I'm not mistaken, that's where the vast majority of the rentals are. Now, I know that there are rentals on Skyline and everywhere else. There's probably a rental on Duckwoods Drive, but generally speaking, the rental industry is over there where we've currently got MSD 1 and 2.
Heavy on the avenues and,
Now, if we start taxing the inland, the townwide properties too much, then we're going to start running into the same thing that we're getting from the MSD1 property owners. And that is that you, Leo, I don't know what your income situation is like that, but if we start increasing your taxes too much, you're not going to be able to afford to stay where you are.
That's true.
Whereas the rental companies can increase their fees $25 a week or $100 a week, whatever it
I
takes.
don't disagree with you, but I don't think we should approach this on whether the people in the districts can rent or not.
I don't either.
I don't think.
No, I don't think you can, but
Because the property ownership might change, this tax will carry with the property ownership.
Yeah.
The choices of those individual owners might change. And to say sort of obliquely that they can just pass it off to the renter, I mean, it's obviously there as part of the conversation, but I just don't think that's a good way to slice it out.
well, the only thing I'm getting at there is that the majority of the rentals are over there. They're the ones that benefit the most from having a good solid beach over there. So we, on this side of the beach, of the town, we benefit also. And I'm all for increasing our commitment to it. But I think that there is a case to be made for the oceanfront and MSD2s to be picking up a little bit more.
And the case is pretty clear, and I've just never been asked to nourish the beach from somebody outside of those districts. The only people that have asked are the people that are in those districts.
I talked to some people that asked for it.
Outside of the district?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there have been a
Not a
few.
lot, but some,
Yeah.
they thought it was a good idea and they thought we should do it.
Well, they thought, the ones I've talked to,
They,
they,
of course, don't really want to have to pay for it. So
They're-
then no one wants to. pay
And that's
for
where
it.
we're dragging both sides into the game together, and that's why this has been so difficult, because there is a large town concept that they don't want to do it, or they don't want to pay for it, and we're gonna have to coerce them, and then we also have to coerce the oceanfront people into sharing.
well, the
too.
ones that internally that want it done, they'll tell you, at least the ones I've talked to. One, yeah, we don't really agree that it needs to be done, but if you're doing it, then there should be the MSD program, and they feel the 1s and 2s should be more,
That's generally a consensus of
what you're hearing.
yeah. I've heard a little bit more just in the last 2 weeks of people that just think we shouldn't be messing with it.
Yeah.
But in general, it's okay if you're going to go forward with it. We'll pitch in, but
So how does what's up there on the yellow right now, how does that fit? Is that something we could agree on or not?
I don't know that I'm ready to agree on anything. I mean,
Well-
I don't mean that argumentatively. I'm just still ready to sleep on it.
I think you hit the nail on the head a few minutes ago when you said, take those 3 numbers up there and the zones that they represent, townwide 2 or in MSD 1, and figure out the proportion first. And then we back into the numbers. Is it 30, 30, 30? Then what would it be? 33.3% for people up there. Then what would the tax numbers be? Or is it 50, 25, 25? What would the numbers be?
I think my
50,
form-
25, 25?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a good approach, Jim, is on debt service. 50, 25, 25.
Well, that's good
is-
because I understand.
It's like
that was your
18,
idea.
9, and 3, or 2.5. I mean, I mean,
I'm sorry, so they'd be what?
this is the spreadsheet that I look at that has I have MSD2 isolated from MSD1, even though it includes it. It's,
There you go, Cliff's doing it on the screen.
Yeah, my formulas stopped working. I can start over with these.
well, you're close, because it's 6.5 added to the 12, you're at 18. I mean,
Yeah, now if they just stopped. For whatever reason, that worked.
the interesting thing when I looked at it, when you run 33, 33, 33, is MSD2 actually has a higher tax increase than MSD1 because their valuation is low.
Mhm.
So that's,
Those numbers aren't right.
I think they all need to be in that, starting with like 30, 30, 33, 33, 33, adjust MSD1 up, adjust MSD2 down, and maybe keep the town somewhere in 33 to 40. I mean, that's sort of, which is pretty close to the manager's originally recommended budget. So like if you did the oceanfront's 45, MSD2 exclusive of the oceanfront is 20, and the town is exclusive of the 2 MSDs is 35. It's 3.7, 7.4, and 15.8, which I think is fairly fair.
Are we going to? So we're going to talk about this after the public hearing on June 1st?
I think, yes. I don't have it. Originally, I was thinking, I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, I
It's a
think,
loaded topic. And the more I think about it, the more I see some real priorities that we need to take care of that are 100% townwide. And I don't want to endanger those priorities.
is that-
Agreed.
Now, when Ken gave us $1 million less budget, I know the county's not going to let us
keep
deduct
that.
that.
They'll take it down and divide that 13 by 2.
Well, I mean, and then the bids, just,
Well, you don't know what the bids are going to be anyway, so
no, you don't.
despite his
No offense
confidence
to the
level.
project. You don't have any idea.
He doesn't know.
No,
I wouldn't want to be in his shoes trying to
Well, and the,
give those engineers estimates.
and the way the budget process works, we vote for, we vote for a rate in June,
Mhm.
that's good for a year. We can always, we will be then voting again the following year, and we can adjust the rates accordingly.
If there's no unassigned fund being contributed, the townwide equal rate would be 7.82.
Mhm.
And somewhere in that 6.5, 7.82 is where I feel like MSD two should fall. And then just, and figure out what that debt share is. That's basically 20% of the project, and then see where the other two, everybody think about what they think is fair. I invite people, there's nobody in the audience to yell at me as they have been. I still haven't heard anybody's idea of what's fair in terms of.
Well, the only one we heard was, the one lady said somewhere between 10 and 20%. That was the first number I'd heard. That was at our last meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
Polisher lot.
It's true, and the thing to keep in mind is because the whole town's in the game, like if you're increasing oceanfront, let's say 15, and the town's got 3, it's a 12-cent increase over what the rest of the town's paying. So that's substantially more than 10-20%.
Yeah, and I think she was talking about her entire tax bill. I think she lumps it all together, the
Well, I
county
get, you
bill
know,
and the
it
town.
was never
bill.
clarified, but with a number,
I don't know, I'd have
she
to
had
ask her
not-
specifically.
she had not, nobody has given a number that they could live with.
They don't know.
Yeah,
I think that's the answer.
Well, that's the answer, and then we got to figure it out. And, you know, somewhere, either we're going to get to the point, either we've got to do it this way, or we don't do it. And we take those extra funds and put them in our street project, water, stormwater management, and what have you. And let it, and if there's a problem, hey, you have your opportunity, but we no longer have the money. And we don't know what will happen to the funds that the county, 5 years, if we don't do it now, we're going to have to wait 5 or 7 years. And are they going to say, well, you had an opportunity, but we don't have any money now?
Yeah, you won't be on the list if you don't do it now.
So that's the hard part, but we're getting down to the point of, we either got to fish or cut bait.
We've been there.
so I would definitely invite, anyone who hasn't
I'd-
written an email or called one of us or written us a letter or whatever.
I'd love to hear more from the internal, we're getting
to hear
all
more
we're getting
from
all the
our property
voices
owners.
from here.
Yeah.
What about the ones that on that town-wide side?
I mean, just anecdotally from talking to some people that I socialize with, those that thought that we should do it definitely thought that the oceanfront people should pay more.
Yeah, that's the,
But coming up with, you can't get them to even come up with even if I tell them what their rate would be and how much their tax bill would go up, I couldn't even get them to say whether that was okay or not.
The people that you've talked to on this side.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So
it's hard for
please
them to
let us
internalize
know
the
if
dollar
you're
value.
listening. Give us an email.
If you're still listening.
If you're still listening, give us, call one of us. Tell us what you think. And like Leo said, especially if you live inside rather than in
Yeah.
MSD 1 or 2.
yeah, I'd like to hear more from the town-wide side, not the MSD 1s and 2s, because we're hearing that. It's the others, the silent group.
Mhm.
And when they're silent, that scares you.
We sent out a questionnaire some months ago, a good while ago, asking people whether they were for or against the idea of beach nourishment. And we got back kind of a split. It was pretty close for and pretty close again, pretty close for and not too far off with those against. But we haven't really gotten into the money game at all. We haven't given them any choices about what do you think about this as far as your taxes? Is it possible to do that without making it impossible to answer the question? I don't know. Is there a way you could put out a questionnaire or do a survey where you could say we are considering A,
You
B,
can
and
attach
C?
a survey to the newsletter, but
You
it'd
need
be a
to,
grain of salt is all.
you need to have something like, and I hate to use the group Survey Monkey, but a lot of people do, but that would give you some
Yeah.
some feeling.
On the mailer we sent out a year ago, it
Mhm.
said your taxes will increase 300 to 3,500.
That's what we said.
And
Mhm.
please weigh in. And I meant to go back and in my notes that I didn't get a pure geographical split, but it seemed it was about 50-50. It was a little bit on the positive side was the response, and most of the positive response was on the ocean side, and most of the negative response was over here. Now, a lot of people who attended that May meeting, once they understood the MSD model, I think some of the negative responses started to come over. And now this is a very small sample because we're talking maybe a dozen people, but
Mhm.
they started to warm up to the idea of nourishment once they saw the graduated tax schedule. So it's
Part of me is hesitant about going out with a questionnaire because this issue is so complicated, it's hard to relay all the complexities to the public. But then also there's the fact that the five of us up here were elected. I think I don't want to be bullheaded about this, but I think we are the ones that were elected to make these decisions.
I'm
Now,
going to elect you to make the decision.
What's that?
I said, I'm going to elect you to make the decision.
Now, I agree with hearing more from people, especially those west of NC 12 and everything, but I think questionnaires and stuff, especially Survey Monkeys, those things can be manipulated.
Well, and then you get other outsiders
Yes.
weighing in on it. That was just, as a suggestion, but you got to be careful what you get.
Well, following Jim's logic, then we should work this thing through at this council level and decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
I think we're immersed in this enough to be able to make intelligent decisions. And what I'm gathering is everybody up here wants to be fair and equitable to everybody in the town. Those in MSD 1, 2, and the rest of the town kick in because we do benefit. We all moved out here because of those beaches. So anyway, I was just speaking about the questionnaire thing.
Yeah, I'm not a favor of a questionnaire either. I think we just need to,
Yeah, I wasn't
Get to a
recommending
point
it.
of-
I was just.
yeah, get to a point of
making.
making a
Yeah, I
decision.
mean, well, that's what we need is brainstormed ideas right now.
and I don't think there's any harm in having the public hearing on June the 1st, and then we have this discussion and then finally make a decision on the rates on June the 1st. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, not with homework
I'm sorry,
beforehand,
say that
so.
one more time.
We have a public
Sorry,
hearing
Jim.
on June the 1st,
Mhm.
and then hopefully we'll hear from people between now and then, but we'll definitely hear from people then on the budget in general and, beach nourishment tax rates specifically. And then after that public hearing, we can have this discussion among council, and then we can make a decision on June the
One
1st.
way or the other.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, one way or the other, and then how we're going to pay for it
Mhm.
with one way or the other.
Yeah.
We could decide, because the circumstances we have no control, we could decide we don't want to do this. It's not something we have to do,
Correct.
as Matt was saying.
Mhm.
Anything else, council?
If prior to that, I mean, we have the manager's recommended numbers in our budget packet already.
Mhm.
If we have a discussion after public hearing, I mean, I just think a couple baselines to that discussion would be helpful. Rather than putting Cliff on the spot and manipulating spreadsheet numbers, things like that. There's probably no consensus today to offer him. I'm just probing to see if there is. I mean, I would throw out there MSD 1 is 40% of the debt. MSD 2 minus MSD 1 is 25% of the debt, and the town minus the two MSDs is 35%. And that can, just as a starting point to discuss.
Say that again.
It's close to the manager's recommended budget. It's a little bit off, a little bit higher on MSD 2 and a little bit lower on MSD.
What was the manager's recommended budget again?
It is about 3.5 on the town. I'm going around numbers, 6.5 on 2, and then the total for 1 was 18. So Was it another 9 cents, Cliff? It's in our packet.
It was 12.3 and 3.42.
12, 3, and
It's on
3 point.
page 4 of the packet.
3.42.
And 3.4.
Yes.
12, 4.
Down at 3.1.
12, 3, and 4.2, or 3.42.
Elizabeth, do you have this binder still? The little one? It's page 4.
Yeah, I don't have it.
That puts the oceanfront at 18.4.
Yeah, the,
3 and 3.42. Got it.
the, it would be MST1 paying 18.42, MSD2 paying 6.42, and MSD1 paying 3.42. If you look at the screen, you'll see the percentages. MSD1 34%, MSD2 17, and townwide 54.
But when you look at the total tax rate there, it's pretty close. MSD2 and townwide are pretty close.
Yes.
It's the one is,
It's a significant increase in one.
yeah, it's
No
12 cents, 12 cents difference between 1 and 2. Based on the total.
Now, what's up there with 12 cents for MSD1? Does that include the
No.
3 for 2? Okay, so they're actually paying 18.4.
Right, that's right.
And
That just, it may be the only thing we can do. That just doesn't seem equitable to me. And I know that the beach can benefits the most, but
In spite of what I said earlier about that area, District 1 and 2 being most of the rentals, there are a number of people there who do not rent, who live there year round. So it's a double-edged sword, no matter which way you cut it. So what's the best way to proceed from here on this? Is it taking, Matt, the 33, 33, 33, and just using those as baseline numbers right now for our next meeting?
Well, if we did that, then 2 would be higher than 1, but that's.
and they'll scream on that
The
one.
aggregate cost would be higher. But we can, what do you think? Put a couple of scenarios together for discussion purposes, start with the manager's recommended, maybe go townwide at 4.5 and then see where it shakes out. But if we sort of operate under the assumption that 2's at that almost equalized rate, as if it were a equal rate across the entire town, and 2's sort of in that territory, I think it alleviates the discussion on the other 2 sides of the seesaw.
Is it fair to say 4.5 townwide as high as you'll go?
I'm looking at our budget now, I'm wondering, maybe we should just not do it. So, I mean, it's
In my personal opinion, 4.5 would be the top number.
That really puts it into perspective. I mean, that really helps me determine, because if you set that townwide rate, there's very little, and you
That's
want to
true.
try and keep the MSD2 at the 6.5, it's really little left.
And then the reality is, a potential 3 cents tax increase next year
Yeah,
on the
let's see.
townwide rate, which includes all of the MSDs. So
Yeah.
we're de facto talking about 7.5% to 8 cent tax increase. And then you layer the MSDs on these 2 districts. I don't know. It's not an exciting time to be a governing official.
That's
I
why
can't
we,
print money. It's.
well, I thought you ran one print
If
up
I could
there.
put my home in MSD1 only and not my neighbors, I would feel a little better about making these decisions. And that's probably the toughest part of this. I've got family, friends, and clients in these districts, but my home is not. And I wish that it were.
Well,
We
all
can-
of us.
No, I'm just kidding.
You can. I
You
don't.
Squiggle the line up.
That's how firmly I do believe in this.
As a
That it should
beginning,
be graduated like that.
as a beginning point for our next discussion, what if we just gave Cliff the direction to use the townwide 4.5 cent? And then let him shake out what 1 and 2 would be.
I think based on what Matt just said about the years in the future, I'd rather try to keep the town at 4 rather than 4.5, if we can.
That's why I picked 4.
I can go either way. I mean, my initial
Okay.
conversations I've had has been 4. I'm just trying to figure out what can we do to push this thing through if we're going to do it.
I would generally, I like the manager's recommended budget, maybe tweak it a little bit. But I think
Well, that would, if we go.
I was
just-
actually thinking we could maybe make the general fund increase this year 4 flat, but the excess over the 342 goes to offset the unassigned fund that we're using to balance our budget.
Mhm.
That would knock out 80 grand over or something. So it's, because we, I don't know. I did instruct to use unassigned fund to balance our budget, but it's also, it's unsustainable. And we all know that. We're not being
Right.
mature about it, but it can be real easy not to nourish the beach. Just raise taxes 3.5 cents and then we're good for a decade. You know?
Well, there are those that will make that argument that that's what we should do.
Yes, there will.
4, 2, and 9.
I've had some make it to me.
If you were to raise the townwide to 4, then MSD 1 could be 9 and MSD 2. If you wanted to keep it at this.
That'd cover your debt.
Yeah, if you wanted to keep MSD 2 at the 6.5, yeah, you could do 8, 2.5, and 4.
14 and a half.
Yeah, those numbers look far more equitable to me.
So
Then MSD2 is at 6.5.
right, which is where they would be if we one size.
Yeah.
If we want to cross, if we cross the
Mhm.
whole town, we 6. So
I think that's along the lines of where we need to land.
That's what
And we keep dancing around kind of the same numbers. It's just-
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's-
majority of folks have asked for, is that you put 6.5% on the MSDs. They have
Mhm.
townwide, but that's what they've asked for.
Mhm.
And so with the idea that the oceanfront gets more, so they pay more,
Mhm.
townwide gets less, so they pay less, it's pretty good.
Mhm.
and then
And we're bringing 2 parties to the dance, kicking and screaming.
so
Mhm.
when you look at the total over there, that the difference between 1 and 2 is about 8 cents. Where before what we were looking at here was 12, so we've shaved some off of it.
Well, there's always the chance that, that, like I said, the smart people in Raleigh will come up with an infrastructure plan that we can get a grant from and we can make changes to this.
Then we can lower our tax
Yeah.
rates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
each year we'll have to look at this.
But, at this point in the game, that's just talk. But they are sitting on a lot of money, a lot of unassigned fund balance.
So let's have 3 scenarios for discussion after the hearing, and that way we can have feedback on it, hopefully, if anybody's watched the YouTube of this day-long event. The model that Cliff's got, the manager's recommended, and let's just throw one, I don't know.
What would be another one other than this one?
Maybe
that-
MSD 2 goes higher than what an equal town-wide and helps the ocean front a little bit even more.
So take that to 3 and take that to 7,
Close.
okay?
So the ocean's going 14, MSD 2 is doing 7.
Yeah, just to cover it, I'd feel better because you get 99.95% collection, then we're okay.
Yeah.
But if you even went to 7.15, then
So that
Well,
puts
they
the
don't pay
ocean
us
front
a lot of
at
real
14,
estate.
14. Roughly 14.
14.15, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so those are three,
I think we tailored, yeah, we had a good discussion already. so
yeah, and then we'll see what we hear back on the 1st of June, and then we
Tweak it from there.
do this again and
make a
we make a decision.
I can't help it but wondering that what we've just done up here and come up with, how that might impact somebody's public comments on June 1st unless they have this information.
Can only hope.
Oh, well,
Should send a mailer
I'll,
to everyone in town.
I'll just keep wondering that until I
We
hear
have
the
a
public
newsletter that
comments.
goes out between now and June 1st?
Yeah, we can always do one, but Friday.
Friday.
So can we do a request for feedback on these tax rates?
So it would, yes, we, 9, 2, and 4, 7.5, 3, and 4, and then the recommended.
Yep.
Okay.
And just see what happens.
So we're going to do a request for feedback from the public on these?
Yeah,
And say that's what we're gonna, it's the basis for our discussions on the, after the public hearing. So they can come and tell us what they think of the public hearing, or they can contact us between now and then.
Right.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah,
You okay with that?
we just have to move
Yeah.
forward.
I was thinking about county contribution. My mind shifted a little bit. I mean, they got access to our $1.5 million grant to try to make the project work. If our project is really $1 million less than what we're considering, I mean,
It wouldn't hurt to talk to
I
them.
wouldn't, I mean, I would try to inquire to keep their contribution the same and our contribution reduces. I mean, I know that's probably going to be an unpopular thing to say, but part of the reason that our costs are lowering is because of the general stability of the beach.
I can ask.
That's
But
all
the-
they can
but
say
the-
is no.
Yeah, it's
What
worth the
response
ask.
might be that we haven't opened the bid package.
No, I understand that. It's just, but as long as they stay on that sort of commitment of what they've already committed to us, and, we can let the bid package be what it is.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling we need a little more stability from the county and what they are telling us here.
They're doing the best they.
Yeah, I know they can, but I know they
Even if
are,
they
but
say
If you,
no, we're gonna
if you
have to
think of
make
what
a
they've been
decision.
able to put together, they're.
You know, it's nice to say we got that in our back pocket as
Absolutely,
insurance, but
Anything else you want to discuss?
no, I'm done.
I'm way done. Thank
All
you.
right. Matt, you okay?
What do you guys want to talk about
Anything else
next?
you want to
I
discuss?
just hit my second win.
I need
Keep
a
staff
motion
here
to,
another couple hours.
I need a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
no, one, you're gonna replace that cheap.
I would like to move that we adjourn. Mr.
I'll
Mayor.
second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in
I
favor?
think you
All
had
in
3
favor?
seconds.
Meeting's
Aye.
adjourned at
Dogs.
3:37.
Put this dog to sleep.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Oh, my word.
When you get
Kept me
Charlie
going.
work there?
I did. I got a little grab right there. Just from sitting.
Kept me going today, girl. I was ready to quit.
You were ready to, I know, I thought you were going to bail on us a couple hours ago.
Well, I tried.